The stars looked different from the command deck of the UES Horizon as Commander Jake Mitchell stared out into the endless void of space. His ship had been patrolling the Kepler sector for 3 months now, watching over the new human colonies that had sprouted up like flowers after a spring rain. The sector was quiet, peaceful even, with only the occasional asteroid mining vessel or supply transport breaking the silence. Jake had been in space for 15 years, ever since he graduated from the Earth Defense Academy. He had seen humanity take its first steps into the galaxy, watched as they built their first stations around distant suns, and helped protect the brave souls who decided to make their homes among the stars. It was good work, important work, and he took pride in keeping the frontier safe. The communication console beeped softly, pulling Jake from his thoughts. Lieutenant Amy Rogers, his communications officer, looked up from her station with a puzzled expression. "Commander, we're receiving a priority transmission from Nexus Prime. It's addressed to Earth Command, but they're routing it through all patrol vessels in the sector." Jake frowned. Nexus Prime was the capital world of the Galaxy Council, home to the 12 most powerful species in known space. Humans had been granted observer status in the Council just 5 years ago, but they rarely received direct communications from the alien leadership. "Put it through to the main screen, Lieutenant." The holographic display flickered to life, showing a tall figure with blue-gray skin and 4 arms. Chancellor Vorthak of the Altarian Federation was one of the most influential beings in the galaxy, his species having been founding members of the Council over 1,000 years ago. His large black eyes seemed to stare directly at Jake as the translation matrix converted his words into perfect English. "To the leadership of the human species, greetings from the Galaxy Council. Recent activities by your people in the Kepler sector have raised serious concerns among several member species. You are hereby summoned to appear before the full Council within 72 Earth Standard Hours to answer for these actions. Failure to comply will result in immediate sanctions and possible military intervention. This message is official and binding under the terms of the Galactic Charter." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving Jake and his crew staring at the empty screen. The bridge was silent except for the soft hum of the ship's engines and the occasional beep from the monitoring stations. Jake had never seen anything like this before. In all his years of service, he had never heard of the Galaxy Council issuing such a direct threat to any species. "Amy, send an immediate priority burst to Earth Command. Include the full transmission and our current patrol logs. They need to know about this right away." Jake's voice was steady, but inside he felt a cold knot of worry forming in his stomach. The Galaxy Council didn't make empty threats, and if they were talking about military intervention, the situation was far more serious than anyone had realized. Back on Earth, President Lisa Carter was in the middle of a routine cabinet meeting when the emergency alert came through. The soft chime of her personal communicator made everyone in the room look up. She glanced at the message display, and her face went pale. "We need to clear the room, now. Defense Secretary Adams and Secretary of State Johnson, please stay." As the other cabinet members filed out, President Carter pulled up the full transmission on the conference room's main screen. The 3 leaders watched in growing alarm as Chancellor Vorthak delivered his ultimatum. When it was over, Defense Secretary Tom Adams was the first to speak. "Madam President, our intelligence reports from the Kepler sector show no unusual activity. Our colonists have been following all established protocols. They've conducted environmental surveys, attempted contact with any potential claimants, and even established joint research facilities where appropriate. I don't understand what the Council is upset about." Secretary of State Karen Johnson nodded in agreement. "The colonies in question were established in unoccupied space according to our surveys. We've been careful to avoid any areas that might be claimed by other species. This summons doesn't make sense unless there's something we're missing." President Carter stood up and began pacing around the table. She had been dealing with interstellar politics for 3 years now, ever since humanity had been granted observer status in the Galaxy Council. The alien leadership had always been polite but distant, treating humans like children who needed to be watched and guided. This sudden aggression was completely out of character. We need our best diplomat on this. Who do we have available for? Immediate deployment? She asked. Dr. Ben Williams is our most experienced Xena diplomat. He's handled every major negotiation with alien species since first contact. If anyone can navigate this situation, it's him, Johnson replied. Dr. Williams was in his office at the State Department when the call came through. He had been reviewing trade agreements with the Corvani Mining Guild when his secretary informed him that the president needed to see him immediately. The urgency in her voice told him this wasn't a routine consultation. 20 minutes later, he was sitting in the Oval Office listening to the Chancellor's ultimatum. As a man who had spent his entire career studying alien cultures and politics, he knew better than most how dangerous this situation had become. The Galaxy Council had never issued such a direct threat to any species in living memory. Madam President, I'll need access to all intelligence reports from the Kepler sector, our complete diplomatic files on each council member species, and the fastest ship available. If we only have 72 hours, I need to be on my way within the next 6 hours. President Carter nodded grimly. You'll have whatever you need, Ben. But I have to ask, what are our chances here? The Council has never ruled in favor of a species they consider young and barbaric. Dr. Williams was quiet for a long moment, considering his words carefully. Honestly, Madam President, I don't know. The Council operates on principles and precedents that go back centuries. They view themselves as the guardians of galactic civilization, responsible for maintaining order among the younger species. If they've decided that humanity is a threat to that order, they won't be easily swayed by logical arguments. But you'll try, she said. I'll do more than try. I'll find a way to make them understand that humanity deserves a place in this galaxy. As equals, not as subjects to be controlled. His voice carried a determination that came from years of fighting for his species' place among the stars. As Dr. Williams prepared for his journey to Nexus Prime, news of the Council's ultimatum began to spread through human space. On the frontier, colonies, families gathered around their communication consoles, listening to the reports with growing anxiety. These were people who had left everything behind to build new lives among the stars, and now their very existence was being threatened by alien powers they had never even met. The U's Horizon continued its patrol, but now Jake Mitchell found himself looking at the peaceful colonies with new eyes. Each settlement represented thousands of people who had risked everything for a chance at a better life. The research stations where human and alien scientists worked together to unlock the secrets of the universe. The mining operations that provided rare materials for Earth's growing industrial base. All of it could be lost if Dr. Williams failed in his mission. The countdown to the Galaxy Council's deadline had begun, and the fate of humanity's future in the stars hung in the balance. The fastest ship in the human fleet carried Dr. Ben Williams across the void toward Nexus Prime, but even at maximum speed the journey took 48 hours. He spent every moment of that time studying the files that President Carter had provided, trying to understand what had triggered this sudden crisis with the Galaxy Council. The intelligence reports painted a picture of normal colonial expansion. Human settlers had established 12 new colonies in the Kepler sector over the past 2 years, all in systems that appeared to be uninhabited. They had followed every protocol in the book, sending out survey teams first, broadcasting signals to announce their presence, and waiting the required 30 days before beginning construction. Dr. Williams frowned as he read through the details. Something was wrong with this picture, but he couldn't put his finger on what it was. The colonies were thriving, trade was flowing smoothly, and there had been no conflicts with any known alien species. So why was the Galaxy Council suddenly treating humanity like a threat to galactic peace? His ship dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Nexus Prime system, and Williams got his first look at the capital world of the Galaxy Council. The planet was a marvel of engineering, its surface covered with massive cities that stretched up into the clouds. Orbital platforms surrounded the world like a glittering necklace, each one home to millions of beings from across the galaxy. The docking procedures at Nexus Prime were unlike anything Williams had ever experienced. His ship was guided by invisible force fields to a landing platform deep within the planetary bureaucracy complex. As he stepped out onto the alien metal, he was immediately surrounded by a group of security officers from different species. The leader was a tall, insectoid being with 6 legs and compound eyes that seemed to look in all directions at once. Dr. Williams of the human species, you are expected in the council chambers. Follow the guide drone and do not deviate from the designated path. Williams nodded and began walking behind a small floating sphere that led him through corridors. Filled with aliens of every description, he saw beings made of living crystal, creatures that looked like walking plants, and others that seemed to be made of pure energy contained within force fields. The diversity was overwhelming, but there was something else that struck him as he walked. Every alien he passed looked at him with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. Some whispered to each other as he went by, and he caught fragments of conversation through his universal translator. Words like primitive and dangerous and expansion kept coming up. It was clear that word of humanity's situation had spread throughout the galactic community. The Galaxy Council's Grand Amphitheater was a sight that would have taken Williams' breath away under different circumstances. The chamber was enormous, easily large enough to hold 100,000 beings, with seating areas that spiraled up into the darkness above. The bioluminescent panels covered the walls, pulsing with soft colors that seemed to respond to the emotions of the beings in the room. At the center of the chamber was a circular platform where Williams was directed to stand. Around him, arranged in a perfect circle, were the 12 seats of the Galaxy Council members. Each seat was designed for a different species, from the crystalline formation needed by the Zephyrians to the atmospheric containment unit used by the gaseous Nethori. Chancellor Vorthok of the Altarian Federation stood up from his seat, his forearms spread wide in a gesture that Williams recognized as a formal greeting. Dr. Williams of the human species, you stand before the Galaxy Council to answer for the actions of your people. We have called you here because several member species have brought serious complaints against humanity. Williams looked around the chamber, noting which species were present and which were absent. The 12 members represented the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy, species that had been spacefaring for thousands of years before humanity had even discovered fire. They had built the current galactic order, and they clearly saw themselves as its guardians. The first complaint comes from the Zephyrian Crystal Collective, Chancellor Vorthok continued. A being that looked like a walking diamond rose from its seat, its form refracting light in beautiful patterns as it spoke. The humans have established a colony in the Kepler 438 system, directly adjacent to our sacred crystal gardens. These gardens have been a place of meditation and spiritual growth for our species for over 2,000 years. The presence of human industrial activity has disrupted the harmonic resonance that our ancestors worked so hard to create. Williams made notes on his tablet as the accusation was presented. He had studied the Zephyrian culture extensively, and he knew that their crystal gardens were indeed important to their spiritual beliefs. However, the intelligence reports had indicated that the Kepler 438 system was uninhabited and unclaimed. The second complaint came from the Morden Collective, a species of beings that existed as a shared consciousness across multiple bodies. Their representative spoke in a voice that seemed to come from several throats at once. The human settlement on Kepler 442b has disturbed our ancient burial grounds. These sites contain the remains of our ancestors from before the Great Joining, when our species existed as individuals rather than as a collective consciousness. The humans have built their mining operations directly over these sacred sites, showing complete disrespect for our history and culture. Williams frowned as he listened to this accusation. The survey reports had mentioned some unusual rock formations on Kepler 442b, but there had been no indication that they were burial sites. The human colonists had actually established a small archaeological team to study the formations, treating them with the respect due to any potentially significant historical site. The third complaint came from the Vexstar hive, a species of insectoid beings that functioned as a single organism across billions of bodies. Their representative was a large warrior caste member whose mandibles clicked angrily as it spoke. The humans have contaminated our spawning grounds in the Kepler 440 system. With their industrial waste, our young require pure water and uncontaminated soil to develop properly. The presence of human pollutants has caused mutations in our offspring, threatening the genetic stability of our entire hive. This accusation was particularly troubling because Williams knew that the human colony in the Kepler 440 system had some of the strictest environmental controls in all of human space. The colonists had gone to great lengths to ensure that their activities didn't harm the local ecosystem, and they had regularly monitored water and soil quality. The accusations continued for hours, with each member species presenting their grievances against humanity. The Altarians complained about human military vessels being detected near their border systems. The Kovani accused humans of stealing mining rights to valuable asteroid belts. The Thelians claimed that human research stations were interfering with their scientific experiments. As Williams listened to each complaint, he began to see a pattern emerging. Every single accusation involved areas of space that the Galaxy Council had designated as restricted or sensitive, but that had appeared to be uninhabited according to human surveys. It was almost as if the council members were claiming vast areas of space without actually occupying them, then becoming angry when humans moved into those areas. The final accusation came from the Nithori, a species of gaseous beings that lived in the atmospheres of gas giant planets. Their representative spoke through a translation device that gave their words an eerie, echoing quality. The humans have poisoned the atmospheric feeding chambers of 3 gas giants in the Kepler sector with their industrial emissions. Our people require pure hydrogen and helium to survive, but the human ships and stations are releasing carbon compounds and metal particles into the atmospheres. If this continues, entire populations of our species will be forced to abandon their homes. When the accusations were finally finished, Chancellor Vorthok stood up again and addressed Williams directly. Dr. Williams, you have heard the complaints of our member species. The evidence is clear that humanity has repeatedly violated the territorial rights and cultural sensitivities of established galactic civilizations. The Galaxy Council has deliberated on this matter and has reached a decision. Williams felt his heart racing as he waited for the verdict. The fate of every human colony in the Kepler sector, and possibly humanity's entire future in the galaxy, was about to be decided by these 12 alien beings who saw his species as nothing more than an annoyance to be controlled. The Galaxy Council hereby demands that all human colonies in disputed territories be evacuated within 1 galactic standard year. Human military vessels are banned from entering 12 designated sectors. Earth will accept the permanent presence of Galaxy Council monitoring stations in human space to ensure compliance with these restrictions. The chamber fell silent as the weight of the Council's decision settled over everyone present. William stood alone on the platform, surrounded by the representatives of civilizations that had ruled the galaxy for millennia. They were offering humanity a choice: accept their restrictions and remain a junior member of galactic society, or face complete isolation from the galaxy's trade networks and technological exchanges. Chancellor Vorthok's voice echoed through the chamber as he dealt DR. Ben Williams stood on the platform in the center of the Galaxy Council chamber, feeling the weight of 12 alien civilizations staring down at him. The silence stretched on for what felt like hours, though his chronometer showed it had only been 30 seconds since Chancellor Vorthok had delivered the ultimatum. Williams knew that his next words would determine not just the fate of the human colonies, but potentially the future of his entire species in the galaxy. He cleared his throat and began to speak, his voice carrying clearly through the chambers. Acoustic systems. Honored members of the Galaxy Council, I thank you for this opportunity to address your concerns about human activities in the Kepler sector. However, before I respond to your ultimatum, I believe it is important that we examine the facts of this situation more carefully. Williams activated his portable holographic display, projecting a 3-dimensional map of the Kepler sector above the central platform. The map showed the locations of all human colonies, along with the claimed territories of the various alien species. As the council members watched, he began to highlight specific areas in different colors. This map was compiled using data from the Galaxy Council's own territorial registry, which is publicly available to all species. As you can see, the human colonies in question were established in areas that showed no active claims or occupation at the time of our surveys. The map showed clearly that most of the human settlements were in empty space, far from any alien-controlled systems. Chancellor Vorthok S4 Arms moved in a gesture of dismissal. The territorial registry does not reflect the full scope of our member species' historical claims. Many of these areas have been considered sacred or culturally significant for thousands of years. Williams nodded respectfully. I understand the importance of cultural and spiritual sites to all species, Chancellor. However, I would like to address each complaint individually, starting with the Zephyrian Crystal Collective's concerns about the Kepler 438 system. He manipulated the holographic display to show a detailed view of the Kepler 438 system. The human colony was clearly visible on the third planet, while the Zephyrian Crystal Gardens were located on the moons of the gas giant in the outer system. The distance between them was enormous, nearly 3 billion kilometers. As you can see, the human settlement is located on a terrestrial planet in the inner system, while the Crystal Gardens are in the outer system. Our colonists have been extremely careful to avoid any interference with the gardens themselves. In fact, they have established a joint research station with Zephyrian scientists to study the unique harmonic properties of the crystals. The Zephyrian representative's crystalline form flickered with patterns of light as it responded. The humans may claim to be careful, but their industrial activity has already begun to affect the harmonic resonance of our gardens. The disruption may be small now, but it will grow over time. Williams had anticipated this argument. With respect, the harmonic disruption you mention is actually caused by the natural orbital mechanics of the gas giant's moons, not by human activity. Our scientists have been working with your people to find ways to stabilize the resonance patterns. The research station I mentioned has already made significant progress in this area. He changed the display to show detailed sensor readings from the system. The data clearly showed that the harmonic variations had been occurring for centuries, long before humans had arrived in the sector. If anything, the human presence had led to a better understanding of the phenomenon and potential solutions. Next, Williams turned to the Morden Collective's complaint about the burial sites on Kepler 442b. The holographic display showed the planet's surface with the human mining operations clearly marked. What the council members could now see was that the mining sites were located several hundred kilometers away from the ancient burial grounds. The human colonists discovered these burial sites during their initial survey of the planet, Williams explained. Rather than disturbing them, they immediately established a protective perimeter around the entire area and invited Morden archaeologists to study the sites. The mining operations you see here are located in completely different geological formations with no connection to the burial grounds. The Morden representatives' multiple voices spoke in unison. The humans may claim to respect our burial sites, but their very presence on the planet is a violation of our ancestral rights. Williams paused for a moment, consulting his notes, before responding. I understand your concerns about ancestral rights, but I must point out that according to the Galaxy Council's own records, the Morden Collective abandoned this planet over 800 years ago. The burial sites have been unattended and unprotected all this time. The human presence has actually led to their preservation and study. He brought up historical records from the Council's archives, showing that the Morden had indeed left the planet centuries ago, when they underwent their great joining and became a collective consciousness. The records showed no indication that they had maintained any active claim to the world. The Vex Star Hive's complaint about contaminated spawning grounds was perhaps the most serious accusation, as it involved the potential harm to an entire generation of their species. Williams approached this topic with particular care, knowing that the insectoid species were extremely protective of their young. The Vexstar hive has accused our colonists of contaminating spawning grounds in the Kepler 440 system, he began. However, our environmental monitoring data shows that the system had no active spawning grounds at the time of our arrival. The contamination that has been detected appears to be coming from an abandoned industrial facility left behind by the Corvani Mining Guild over 50 years ago. The holographic display showed the Kepler 440 system with detailed environmental readings. The data clearly indicated that the contamination was concentrated around the old Corvani facility, not the human colony. Williams had done his homework, and he knew that the Vexstar had been unaware of the abandoned facility until the human environmental surveys had detected it. In fact, Williams continued, the human colonists have been working to clean up the contamination left behind by the Corvani facility. They have already reduced the pollution levels by 60%, and they have established a joint cleanup project with Vexstar environmental specialists. One by one, Williams addressed each of the Council's accusations. The Altarian complaints about human military vessels near their borders turned out to be based on long-range sensor readings that had misidentified human survey ships as warships. The Corvani accusations about stolen mining rights involved asteroid belts that had been abandoned decades ago. The Thelian claims about interference with their experiments were based on outdated information about human research activities. As Williams presented his evidence, he could see the mood in the chamber beginning to shift. Some of the council members were whispering among themselves, and he caught fragments of conversation through his universal translator. Words like mistake and misunderstanding were becoming more common than violation and expansion. But Williams wasn't finished yet. He had saved his most important argument for last. Honored members of the Galaxy Council, I've addressed each of your specific complaints, but I believe there is a larger issue at stake here. The accusations you have made are based on the assumption that certain areas of space should be permanently off-limits to newer species, even when they are not actively occupied or claimed. He manipulated the holographic display to show the entire galaxy, with the territories of all council member species highlighted in different colors. The map revealed something that many of the council members had probably never seen so clearly. The vast majority of the galaxy was claimed by the 12 council species, leaving very little room for anyone else to expand. If we apply the same standards that have been used against humanity to all species in the galaxy, we would find that almost every world and system has some historical or cultural significance to someone. The Galactic Charter, which governs all our interactions, states clearly that territorial claims must be based on active occupation and use, not on ancient history or potential future needs. Williams pulled up the relevant sections of the Galactic Charter on his display. The document was thousands of pages long, written in the formal language of interstellar law, but the key passages were clear. Territory could only be claimed through active settlement and development, not through historical association or cultural significance. The human colonies in the Kepler sector have followed all established protocols for expansion, Williams continued. They have conducted environmental surveys, attempted contact with any potential claimants, and established joint research facilities where appropriate. They have not violated any existing territorial claims, and they have actually contributed to the scientific and cultural development of the region. Chancellor Vorthok's expression was difficult to read, but Williams could see that his arguments were having an effect. The other council members were engaged in heated discussions, and the chamber's bioluminescent walls were pulsing with more intense colors as emotions ran high. Dr. Williams, the Chancellor finally said, The Galaxy Council chamber buzzed with heated conversations as the 12-member species debated among themselves. Dr. Williams stood alone on the central platform, watching the alien representatives gesture and argue in their various languages. The translation matrix struggled to keep up with multiple simultaneous conversations, creating a confusing mix of overlapping voices that filled the enormous space. Chancellor Vorthok raised his 4 arms, calling for order. The chamber gradually fell silent as the council members returned to their seats. Williams could see tension in every gesture, every movement of the beings around him. His defense had clearly shaken their confidence, but he wasn't sure if it would be enough to change their minds. "Dr. Williams," the Chancellor began, his voice carrying a note of grudging respect, "your arguments have been thorough. The Council will now deliberate on this matter. You will be escorted to a waiting chamber while we discuss your people's fate." Williams nodded and followed the security escort out of the amphitheater. The waiting chamber was a small, sterile room with a single chair and a viewport that looked out onto the bustling cityscape of Nexus Prime. He could see ships from dozens of different species coming and going from the orbital platforms, a reminder of just how vast and diverse the galactic community truly was. Hours passed with no word from the Council. Williams tried to stay calm, but his mind kept racing through all the possible outcomes. If the Council rejected his arguments, humanity would face isolation from the galaxy's trade networks and technological exchanges. The frontier colonies would be abandoned, leaving thousands of families homeless. Earth's dreams of expansion among the stars would be crushed before they had truly begun, but there was another possibility that worried him even more. If the Council felt truly threatened by humanity's expansion, they might decide that isolation wasn't enough. The combined military forces of the 12-member species could easily overwhelm Earth's defenses. Humanity might not just lose their colonies, they might lose their independence entirely. Through the viewport, Williams could see the lights of the city beginning to dim as Nexus Prime's artificial day cycle shifted toward evening. The planet never truly slept, but the rhythms of its inhabitants created periods of relative quiet that made the waiting even more unbearable. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the security escort returned. "Dr. Williams, the Council is ready to announce their decision." Williams walked back into the amphitheater with steady steps, though his heart was pounding. The chamber seemed even more imposing now, with the bioluminescent walls pulsing in deep, somber colors. The 12 council members sat in their seats like ancient judges, their faces unreadable as they prepared to deliver their verdict. Chancellor Vorthok stood up slowly, his movements deliberate and formal. "Dr. Williams of the human species, the Galaxy Council has carefully considered your arguments and the evidence you have presented. We have also consulted our own records and conducted additional investigations into the matters you raised." The Chancellor paused, looking around at his fellow council members before continuing. "We acknowledge that some of the accusations made against your people may have been based on incomplete or outdated information. The Council recognizes that human colonists have generally followed established protocols and have made efforts to respect the rights and customs of other species." Williams felt a small surge of hope, but he could hear the "but" coming in the Chancellor's tone. "However," Vorthok continued, "the rapid expansion of humanity into previously unclaimed territories has created significant concerns among several member species. The Galaxy Council has a responsibility to maintain stability and order throughout the galaxy. We cannot allow the actions of any single species, no matter how well-intentioned, to disrupt the balance that has been maintained for over 1,000 years." The chamber was completely silent now, with every being present focused on the Chancellor's words. Williams could feel the weight of history pressing down on him as he waited to hear humanity's fate. After extensive deliberation, the Galaxy Council has reached the following decision, Vorthok announced. All human colonies established in the Kepler sector must be evacuated within 1 galactic standard year. This evacuation will be supervised by Joint Council peacekeeping forces to ensure it is conducted in an orderly manner. Williams felt his heart sink as the first part of the sentence registered. The colonies would have to be abandoned after all, despite his best efforts to defend them. "Furthermore," the Chancellor continued, "human military vessels are hereby banned from entering 12 designated sectors of space. These sectors include areas of particular cultural or spiritual significance to Council member species, as well as regions considered strategically sensitive for galactic security." The holographic display above the platform lit up with a map. showing the restricted sectors. Williams could see that they formed a rough barrier around Earth and the established human colonies, effectively boxing humanity into a small corner of the galaxy. In addition, the human government will accept the permanent presence of Galaxy Council monitoring stations in human space. These stations will be staffed by representatives from multiple species and will have the authority to oversee all human expansion activities. No new colonies may be established without prior approval from the Monitoring Council. Williams listened to each restriction with growing dismay. The monitoring stations would essentially make humanity a supervised species unable to expand or develop without permission from alien overseers. It was exactly the kind of second-class citizenship that he had warned against in his defense. Finally, Chancellor Vorthak said, the human species will be required to pay reparations to the affected council member species for any damages or disruptions caused by their expansion activities. The exact amount of these reparations will be determined by a special tribunal to be convened within 60 days. The Chancellor looked directly at Williams as he delivered the final part of the Council's decision. These terms are non-negotiable. The Galaxy Council has spoken with one voice on this matter. The alternative to accepting these restrictions is complete isolation from galactic civilization, including the immediate termination of all trade agreements, technological exchanges, and diplomatic relations. Williams felt the full weight of the ultimatum settling on his shoulders. The Council was offering humanity a choice between accepting severe restrictions on their freedom or facing total isolation from the galaxy. Either option would effectively end humanity's dreams of becoming a major player in galactic civilization. Dr. Williams, the Chancellor continued, you have been given the authority to speak for your species in this matter. The Galaxy Council requires an immediate response. Do you accept these terms on behalf of humanity, or do you choose isolation from the galactic community? The chamber fell silent again as every being present waited for Williams' answer. He could feel the eyes of 12 ancient civilizations upon him, expecting him to bow to their authority as countless other species had done before. The weight of billions of human lives hung in the balance, along with the future of his species among the stars. Williams closed his eyes for a moment, thinking of the families on the frontier colonies who had risked everything for a chance at a better life. He thought of the scientists and explorers who had dedicated their lives to pushing the boundaries of human knowledge. He thought of the children who dreamed of walking on distant worlds and meeting alien civilizations as equals, not as subjects. When he opened his eyes, Williams looked up at Chancellor Vorthak and the other council members. His voice was steady and clear as he prepared to give humanity's answer to the galaxy's most powerful alliance. Chancellor Vorthak, honored members of the Galaxy Council, I have heard your terms and I understand the choice you have presented. To my people, this is indeed a momentous decision that will affect the future of humanity for generations to come. The chamber remained silent as Williams paused, gathering his thoughts for what might be the most important words any human had ever spoken. Before I give you our answer, I want to be absolutely certain that I understand the situation correctly. You are asking humanity to abandon colonies that were established legally according to the Galactic Charter. You are asking us to accept permanent restrictions on our freedom to explore and expand. You are asking us to submit to foreign oversight of our sovereign territory. And you are asking us to pay reparations for actions that violated no established laws or treaties. Chancellor Vorthak's expression remained impassive. That is correct, Dr. Williams. Those are the terms the Council has decided upon. Do you accept them or not? Williams straightened his shoulders and looked directly at the Chancellor. The moment had arrived when humanity would have to choose between freedom and security, between independence and acceptance. The choice would define not just their immediate future, but their place in the galaxy for centuries to come. I understand the terms completely, Williams said quietly, and I am prepared to give you humanity's answer. Dr. Ben Williams stood alone on the platform in the center of the Galaxy Council chamber, surrounded by the representatives of 12 ancient civilizations. The silence was so complete that he could hear his own heartbeat echoing in his ears. Every being in the vast amphitheater waited for his response to the Council's ultimatum, the words that would determine humanity's place in the galaxy for generations to come. Williams looked up at Chancellor Vorthak, then slowly turned to face each of the council members in turn. The Zephyrion's crystalline form refracted the chamber's light into rainbow patterns. The Vexstar warrior's mandibles clicked softly with anticipation. The gaseous Netheri swirled within their containment field like a living storm cloud. These were beings whose civilizations had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years, who had never been defied by a younger species. Chancellor Vorthak, Williams said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustic systems, I have considered your terms carefully. I understand that you expect humanity to abandon our colonies, accept restrictions on our expansion, submit to foreign monitoring, and pay reparations for actions that violated no established laws. The Chancellor's forearms moved in a gesture of impatience. Dr. Williams, the Council has made its decision. We require only a simple answer. Do you accept our terms or not? Williams took a deep breath, thinking of all the people depending on his decision. He thought of the families on the frontier colonies who had built new lives among the stars. He thought of the scientists making groundbreaking discoveries in joint research facilities. He thought of the children on Earth who looked up at the night sky and dreamed of exploring distant worlds. I have humanity's answer, Williams said quietly. The chamber held its breath as he paused for a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity. Then, with perfect clarity and absolute conviction, Dr. Williams spoke the single word that would be remembered across the galaxy for centuries to come. No, the effect was immediate and explosive. The Altarian delegation erupted in flashes of angry bioluminescence. The Vexstar warriors' chittering reached a deafening crescendo that made the chamber's walls vibrate. The Morden collective's multiple voices rose in a cacophony of outrage. Even the usually calm Zephyrians began to resonate, with harmonic discord that sounded like breaking glass. Chancellor Vorthak's black eyes widened in shock. In over 1,000 years of Galaxy Council history, no species had ever given such a direct rejection to a Council ultimatum. The very foundations of galactic order seemed to shake with the implications of that single word. Dr. Williams, the Chancellor said, his voice barely controlled, surely you understand the consequences of rejecting the Council's generous offer. Your species will face complete isolation from galactic civilization. No trade, no technology exchange, no diplomatic relations. Your people will be alone in the darkness of space. Williams remained calm despite the chaos erupting around him. I understand the consequences perfectly, Chancellor. But I also understand something else. Humanity examined your terms and found them unacceptable. We will not abandon our colonies. We will not accept permanent restrictions on our freedom to explore and expand. We will not submit to foreign oversight of our sovereign territory. And we will not pay reparations for actions that violated no established laws. The chamber erupted in even louder protests. Some council members were calling for immediate military action against the human worlds. Others were demanding to know how a primitive species could dare to defy the established order. The bioluminescent walls pulsed with violent reds and oranges as emotions ran wild throughout the amphitheater. You cannot simply refuse the Council's authority, Chancellor Vorthak shouted over the noise. The Galaxy Council has maintained order in this galaxy for over a millennium. No species has ever challenged our decisions, Williams nodded respectfully. That may be true, Chancellor, but humanity is formally withdrawing from the Galaxy Council and its restrictive charter. We reject your claim to authority over our expansion and development. Our colonies will remain exactly where they are, protected by Earth's growing fleet. The implications of Williams' words sent shockwaves through the assembled aliens. If humanity withdrew from the Council, it would set a precedent that could destroy the entire system of galactic governance. Other species might follow suit, leading to chaos and conflict throughout the galaxy. This is madness, the Zephyrian representative said, its crystalline form flickering with agitation. Without the Council's guidance, the younger species will destroy themselves and take the rest of the galaxy with them. Williams shook his head. With respect, we don't need your guidance. What we need is equality. Any species that wishes to trade with us or establish diplomatic relations will be welcome to do so. But they will deal with us as equals, not as masters dictating terms to subjects. The Corvani Mining Guild representative, who had been silent throughout most of the proceedings, suddenly spoke up. What about existing trade agreements? The Corvani have profitable relationships with several human colonies. Those relationships can continue, Williams replied. In fact, they can expand. Humanity is prepared to offer better terms to trading partners who treat us as equals rather than as subjects to be controlled. This statement caused a new wave of discussion among the Council members. The smaller species that had been relegated to observer status began to whisper among themselves. For the first time in centuries, they were seeing an alternative to the rigid hierarchy that had dominated galactic politics. The Thelian Scientific Collective's representative raised a tentacled appendage. What about joint research projects? Our scientists have been working closely with human researchers on several breakthrough technologies. Those projects will continue and expand, Williams said. Humanity believes in the free exchange of scientific knowledge among all species. We're prepared to share our discoveries with anyone willing to work with us as partners rather than as supervisors. Chancellor Vorthak's expression had shifted from shock to cold anger. Dr. Williams, you are making a grave mistake. The Galaxy Council has maintained peace and stability for over 1,000 years. Without our guidance, the galaxy will descend into chaos and war. Williams looked directly at the Chancellor. The Council has maintained order through intimidation and control. You've kept younger species in permanent subordination while the older civilizations claimed vast territories they don't even use. That's not peace, Chancellor. That's oppression. The truth of Williams' words hit the chamber like a physical blow. Many of the smaller species had experienced exactly what he was describing, forced to accept restricted territories and limited expansion rights while the Council members claimed entire sectors of space. You speak of chaos and war, Williams continued, but the current system is already breaking down. The Council's attempts to control every aspect of galactic development have created resentment and frustration among dozens of species. Humanity is simply the first to say what everyone has been thinking. As if to prove his point, the Corvani representative stood up from the observer section. The human speaks truth. The Corvani Mining Guild has been restricted from developing profitable asteroid belts because they fall within Council-designated buffer zones. We have lost millions of credits in potential revenue because of these arbitrary restrictions. The Thelian scientist nodded in agreement. Our research has been hampered by Council regulations that prevent us from studying certain phenomena because they might be culturally sensitive to member species. Science should not be subject to political control. One by one, other species began to voice their own complaints about the Council's restrictive policies. The rigid hierarchy that had maintained galactic order for so long was cracking under the weight of accumulated grievances. Chancellor Vorthak raised his arms for silence, but his authority was clearly weakening. This is exactly the kind of chaos that the Council exists to prevent. Without central authority, the galaxy will fragment into competing factions. Williams smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. You're right, Chancellor. The galaxy is going to change. But it won't fragment into chaos. It will evolve into something better. A community of equals working together for mutual benefit rather than a hierarchy where older species control younger ones. As news of humanity's defiance spread through the galaxy's communication networks, something remarkable began to happen. Species that had been quietly resentful of Council control for centuries suddenly found their voice. The Corvani Mining Guild was the first to formally announce new trade agreements with human colonies, followed quickly by the Thelian Scientific Collective. Within days, dozens of smaller species had established diplomatic relations with Earth, eager to participate in what they saw as a new era of galactic cooperation. The Galaxy Council's monopoly on interstellar relations was crumbling. Replaced by a network of voluntary partnerships based on mutual respect and shared interests, the council members themselves were divided. Some, like the Altarians, called for military action against the human worlds. Others, particularly the younger council species, began to question whether the old system of control was still viable in a galaxy where information and ideas could no longer be easily contained.